Hi, I'm Wendy, homeschooling mom of 9, ages 34 to 6. And I'm here today with my son, Jeffrey. He's the second oldest in our family. Going to ask me a few questions about the homeschooling journey.
Yeah, I've got the most frequently asked questions that all of you want to know from someone with as much experience as my mom. I don't feel like I'm qualified or educated enough myself to homeschool my children.
Yeah, this is super common when people would, find out that we homeschool our kids. They'd just be like, oh, I could never do that. And so then, the natural question is, oh, well, why is that? What brings that feeling to you? And the number one answer is that they just, well, I don't know enough, or I didn't do really well in school. So how could I possibly, educate my kids? Again, a valid question if you're thinking in a conveyor belt mindset where here's the teacher and the teacher's imparting all this knowledge to the students, right? So it makes sense why people would be nervous about that. The truth of the matter is when we're in a family setting or small group settings, we all learn together. So in some learning, it's nice if you're a chapter ahead. It's nice if you're just a hair ahead, so you're prepared, even if you're going to read something together or do like a science experiment together. It's nice if you've kind of thought it through before, but it doesn't have to be, miles ahead of them. Just a little bit ahead helps, right? Not a ton, just enough so there's a preparation level so you're not feeling like, I know nothing about this. Or if you are feeling like, I know nothing about this, then that's the opportunity you have to let's learn about this together, right? Now, that can look like anything from anything really, nouns, verbs. If that's not your thing, it's totally fine. Find a curriculum that you can, do together, right? Now that becomes tricky when you have lots of kids, right? And they're all needing your help at the same moment. But there are so many out there that, are scripted. So you can just you can read it. You don't have to be the one that reads it. Your child can read it, and that just don't have to stress about any of those things, because if that's something that your kids want to learn about, then you can all learn about it together. There's always, in any circle of people you're going to be in, there's always going to be someone in the group that knows more about something than you do.
Yeah.
Therefore, so
Take
it is at home. Right. Yeah. So it is at home, even the littlest kids are going to know something more about something than their mom does or their older or younger sibling does. It's just how it is. And the more we get used to that and happy with that and tap into every person's greatness, and things that they have learned to enrich our own education, the better.
Yeah. Well, I think if you just kind of cut the kid loose, not, in the sense that you just say, here, go do whatever kind of thing, but allow them to follow, their passion.
Mm-hmm.
They'll kind of take you on a journey themselves, to learn stuff, and they'll actually become an expert in that field,
yes.
which is actually how it should be in real life, right? Mm-hmm. And it's always been a little mystery why that doesn't happen until college,
Mm-hmm.
for kids, right?
Yeah, right.
Because the world is full of specialists and experts and stuff, and that's what you're training to become, right?
Yeah.
And really win out there. And so why not, fuel that and become an expert in, whatever it may be, whether it be lawn sprinklers for me, or irrigation, or pipe organs for another sibling, or horses for another. All of those have things that can be applied and learned about,
Yeah.
and gain general understanding as you're becoming an expert in that particular field.
Yeah.
So that's on the kid's side, and on the parent, you get the benefit of, while you're not investing as many hours in the day, doing it like the kid is, you're getting the benefit of a more general education, as all of the kids are reporting back and telling you what they learned and stuff, and may even trigger in your mind, actually I didn't know that, or they asked me this question, I didn't realize this, I should study that quick, and that way I can help them with it or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. It also breeds for the younger kids. They become super well-rounded because they've got all the older kids' interests, that they've been a part of as they were kind of tagging along, right?
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it works both directions, right? The little kids have their passions, the older kids have their passions, the middle kids have their passions, and everybody learns a little bit. I recall you having being up in Montana with a person in a senior living situation, and he had a cool organ that he liked to play on, and you knew enough about it because of your younger brother's interest in it to have a conversation with him about it, right?
Yeah.
Not because you'd study organs, but because you'd overheard him and all his talk about it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And it works really, really well.
The other thing that I think a lot of people sell themselves short on, and this is where you're more than qualified, but they might feel overly qualified in the sense that, let's just use something super basic, cooking, for an example, right? If you have a kid, well, let's use me as an example. Now I have my own kids, right? And I have a 2-year-old, and she's just fascinated with cooking. So some people would, say, oh yeah, here's your pretend food or whatever, when you get bigger, we'll teach you about cooking, right? But right now, you should be playing with your, dolly on the ground or something, right? Well, if you don't, that's an interest that she has, right? Just from probably observing, my wife, mom, as we call her at our house, cooking the meals, on a daily basis. And so, kudos to my wife. She has allowed our daughter, even though she's just 2, and to sit there and observe and help, and under supervision, stir the real pot on the stove with the real food, and get her pretend knife, and we give her a real carrot, and she feels like she's helping peel the carrot and whatnot, and just this total love, so much so that every single meal she's right there actively participating. But now she's 2, she has entire recipes memorized. She can tell you how to make a smoothie. I don't know how to make a smoothie like mom, but I can ask my daughter, she's 2, and she'll tell me exactly how many bananas and how many strawberries and stuff to put in the blender.
That's awesome.
So
it's good.
Yeah, you can. So there's different opportunities for sure to take advantage of. And even though you might think that you know more and they shouldn't be ready for that quote unquote level of education, go for it, throw it out there and see what they absorb,
Yes.
If it's something they're interested in, someone super small and young actually has the capability of absorbing, almost a college level education if they're passionate and excited about learning all they can about that specific thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the other thing we should also comment on, I think, in this category is just the resources that we have today that, can educate you as a parent and make you more qualified than ever before.
Yeah.
The internet being the one thing. When I was little, you didn't have that.
Yeah, that's right.
But now, your kid asks a question about a subject and you really don't know. Well, it's only really one search away now,
Right.
in a matter of seconds, you can have the answer.
Right.
You don't need to go to the library or call
Right.
someone, or whatever, like
Right.
you had to.
Right. Right. And that gives us an opportunity that's nice to model a healthy use of technology too. We can go to this to look at the answer to this question, maybe, watch one video and then we're finished. Or if there's more time, then you can explore more. You're doing it together. And so again, it helps model that healthy use of technology for what it, as a tool, not a toy.
Right. Yeah. Another very commonly asked question is, what curriculum do you use?
Yeah, fabulous question. And there are so many out there, and there's so many that we've tried. So just try a bunch of them, I say. But we should say, don't get bogged down in the fact that if you can't keep going with it, right? Now there's a money thing here that enters into it because you don't want to spend so much money and then just not use it, right? So, secondhand stores are a really great place to find little things here and there. Or on the internet, you can find, used Saxon books if you want to try, Saxon math. Timberdoodle is a really great resource from the standpoint of they have lots and lots of curriculum things. They even have like your whole kindergarten, kit, right? So you can just like order everything for the whole year. First grade, second grade, third grade, pricey, yes, but they really do a good job with, including lots of stuff, probably more than you would ever use in a year, being honest. But it's really exciting to get this box of stuff, like have this unpacking ceremony. Look what we get to learn about. Look what you get to learn about. Lay it all out and take a picture of the child laying there by all their stuff. That breeds an excitement that is really nice, right? So there may be other companies besides Timberdoodle, but they do a really good job with that. It is pricey, just say that, and it gets pricier as they get older, but it is exciting to the kids, and it's a good way to keep their excitement up, right? We've used Math-U-See, like math-u, letter U hyphen SEE. That's really great. That is a really great one for mathematical thinking and understanding why things work. Same with Math Inspirations. We've used that. They have great logic puzzles. You can find lots of logic puzzles online too now. But we've used that. We've used the Good and the Beautiful math, which I love. I haven't used Saxon math as much, and yet some people love that. Saxon does a really great job of reviewing things and then teaching the next concept and then reviewing. Some kids really get bogged down in that. So if your kid is getting bogged down, just don't worry about that part. If they've got it, and move on, right? Flexibility is the key word here. Now, when I say that, that doesn't mean just letting them fly by the seat of their pants, right? When they're little, just any positive thing you can give them. I love the Good and the Beautiful things because they start out with little teeny just doodle things if you're going to do handwriting, and then you're just cheering them on. So there's a positive feeling about handwriting, especially with boys, because that one is rough on boys, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a hard one because boys don't want to sit there and they practice their handwriting, for heaven's sake. Why would you do that? It's not a project, right? It's just like this paper and this pencil and they just don't like it, right? And we're heavy on the boys, right? 7 boys, 2 girls. So we have to kind of come up with creative ideas of how to, do you want to write a letter to someone, right? Oh, yeah, sure. Do you want to write a letter to grandma and grandpa, or to maybe you have someone that lives far away, a cousin or a pen pal? We use that a fair amount to write something so that they want to write and have a need to write. Writing letters back and forth to cousins, even if they don't live that far away, is a good thing. But the Good and the Beautiful handwriting is nice because it's, drawing or just following patterns, coloring. So you're still getting the eye-hand coordination and brain coordination going, but not necessarily, just copy this A and copy this other A. They do a good job. They still do that, but it doesn't feel as laborious as it could to some kids, right? So we've used the Life of Fred math a little bit, like I mentioned earlier, for your older sister who didn't like lots of numbers on the page, and it was like more story. Use that a little bit, but I will say that we have not gone cover to cover generally with things, right? And that is probably the biggest thing you have to get used to, is not being uptight about the fact that you're not like going cover to cover on, even if you're trying to be on the fast track, right? If your kid wants to fly through the stuff, then let them fly through the stuff. If they're kind of trudging along, then then let them take longer on the things they love and maybe dabble in the other stuff until they're ready. So anyway.
So I think what you were saying about the flexibility being, important, I was probably the number one killer, so to speak, of your attempts to use curriculum, just because I despised the structure, really, right? One day I wanted to, I was excited about, building a building with my blocks. But the next day, I was more interested in learning about the lawn sprinkler and, watering the lawn or whatever. And from the outsider or from the unexperienced looking in, they'd say, well, that, building with blocks is play. Why would you ever want to just stand there and watch the lawn sprinkler spray water on the grass, right? That's just wasted time. You should be in here, working on your workbook or whatever. And because that's the mentality of, the traditional education system. And, curriculum helps you kind of stay on that course. But why not just let, the kid, myself, build with the blocks and then just ask a question, what was out of all the buildings you built, what foundation was the strongest, that you discovered?
Yeah.
Oh, it was this one. Can you build it again for me and tell me why? Why is that stronger than all the other foundations you did or whatever? And, that's just kind of shooting from the hip, but, structural engineering, architecture, there's math, even though you're not crunching the numbers at that point, but they're seeing in real life that, they stack two blocks on top of each other. That makes the base, flat. That makes the base much sturdier to support taller, as opposed to a rickety block, just sitting on the carpet, on its own,
Right.
kind of thing. So you have to be a little bit flexible, I think, and be willing to be flexible, but recognize those wins,
Yes.
even though the page of the workbook in your particular curriculum that you just spent hundreds of dollars on is not fully filled out,
Right. Right.
So something to certainly take into consideration, I think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, and we should say too that if you're familiar at all with Charlotte Mason, or that's where I got it from. Having the kids ask the question and have the kids say to you, whether it's you're looking at a piece of art or you're looking at a map or something like that. What do you see in this? Some of our treasured past school things are those things that I asked you a question about and then I wrote it down exactly what you said word for word. And that's just so cute. It's just so great now to look back and see those, right? And then see who you've become now. And it's just so great. It also gives the child, when they're saying something to you and you're writing it down, like, wow, mom thinks what I'm saying is so awesome that she's writing it down, that's great. There's a lot of value in that, right? So again, simple, not complex.
And I think all the curriculums you kind of discussed, and we'll leave links for those down in the description if you can check it out and see what works best for all of you. But those are all more like elementary level, would you say? Or do they go all the way through junior high or what?
Yeah, you can find them that go all the way through.
Okay.
The Good and the Beautiful has, science and even history, I think, that goes all the way through.
Okay.
All of their language arts goes all the way through. They're coming out with more math all the time. So and so they have high school courses. I know Timberdoodle does as well.
They have the resources for that higher stuff if they want.
Yeah.
Which is slightly different, again, because I was slightly different. But, in high school, I really wanted to learn about electricity, right? And so instead of setting me up with the whole curriculum about whatever, or saying, well, yeah, but you should be working on your, history and different things like that, you were kind of good enough and wise enough to find, an electrical engineer, that is nearby that could help, answer questions and, enlighten me on stuff about, electrical stuff in general. And that can be really good too, which is basically like having a professor,
Yes, right.
that's specializing in that particular field just in high school.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So,
Regardless of your age.
and yeah, exactly. And when you run into in my case, the electrical engineer who had a PhD in electrical engineering is running these bonkers, calculations, to figure out this electricity, and you go, I should probably learn some of that, that's all not making any sense. And he's solving all kinds of cool electrical related things, just with numbers,
Yeah.
and then he could just go to work and create this awesome, cool system that worked and circuits and all kinds of things. But it started out as numbers and,
Yeah.
so all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to now learn about math, but now I'm learning math to calculate, what I'm interested in, not just what the worksheet's throwing at me.
Yeah, I mean, most kids function best like that. When they see a reason to learn something, then, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Especially for them personally, if it speaks to them personally, then they generally will run with it.
What if my kids, kick against what you're trying to do and teach, in homeschool?
Yeah, which you just plan on happening, right? That shouldn't surprise anyone if that happens, just because kids just do that. They have their agenda in their mind, things they want to do, and it may not mesh, right, super well with what you're hoping for. So instead of seeing that as a negative thing, right, even though it comes across very much like that, depending on the child who's like, no, I won't do that, you see it as a positive thing. Like if they had the words to say, here's what's in my head about, what you're asking me to do, what would they be saying? Sometimes that's hard to figure out right away. So it's an invitation to watch your kids and take cues from them as far as, okay, what are they liking? What are they, interested in? Or have we had too much screen time, so their creativity is kind of, not doing so well. So we need to back off on that. Or if they, or if we need to have a course change, for that kid. Or this happens fairly often when the seasons are changing. If you live in an area where you have 4 seasons or 2 seasons, maybe, this will happen pretty often during a season change, I have discovered. For example, if we, across the board, again, we're heavy on boys, right? Across the board, if we have a winter like we're having this winter, which is just like so little snow, right? the kids are stir crazy, and they just, because you can't get out and just use your energy to play in the snow, right? It's so exciting, it's so much fun, it's cold, it's different, and um, take those cues from them. If they're just, kicking against so many things, maybe it's because you need to pray for a snowstorm or go find some snow somewhere, which is what we've done this year, to just, like change it up a bit. That's actually good for moms too, to change it up and do something instead of so rigid with, oh, I've got to do my things. It's liberating for us too, to just be like, all right, we're going to do something different today, and it gives you a chance to take, input from the kids and then ultimately decide what's going to work. You'll have those that will be, oh, I didn't want to do that. Yeah, I know. We'll get to yours another time, right? But also realize there might be a reason why they're saying it beyond that. When a kid is learning something brand new for the first time, can be very scary because they're unsure, especially if they've been in a situation before where they've been made fun of, or something that they're not that good at has been like spotlighted. Um, you have to approach new things carefully then, because you want to overcome that attitude of I can't learn new things, or this is a scary new thing because I don't know anything about it. So watching for signs of that and being sure that you give some empathy statements along the way. Yeah, this is something new, and I remember learning new things, and it's hard sometimes. Or hey, this is a new thing for you, and let's see what we can explore together about it. That it just helps them feel comfortable and not scared to try this new thing. Or you might have to find a different new thing also, because if that's not their thing they're excited about, then you just could try something different. Having said all of that, when you've got multiple kids, and you're hearing me say this, you're just like, oh, how could I possibly do that for each child? It's hard. It is very challenging, right? But and that's where inspiration from above comes in, because you could not intellectually figure all of that out, right? And so you tap into that direction from above that allows you to be sensitive to something that your child says or does. Sometimes when this happens to me, if there's a lot of kicking against it, it might be time to go just do a field trip. We did that this last week, and go to, the Museum of Natural Curiosity and just have at it, right? And watch them. Spend the time watching them interact with other kids, watching them how they interact with the stuff at the museum, and how they interact with me and other adults. And that is a good way to let them just have some, freedom to explore, and let you have some time to watch, right? The other thing is to have, and this kind of goes along with another question that happens when we get kind of burned out or tired, right? And I think we'll talk about this more, but it just comes up naturally here. So I want to just say something about it. Generally, if you can find something that your kids generally love that you do, maybe they really love to go on bike rides. Now, again, that's a seasonal thing, so you have to be careful with that one. Or sledding, Maybe they love to be read to, have, maybe they like to sing or dance, right? And just have this, when I was growing up, my dad played the accordion, and I absolutely loved when he got that out, and me and my sisters would just dance to our heart's content. So there are things that we incorporate in our family culture. Cooking could be one that everybody tends to enjoy. If you're cooking, then it's got to be something, where you kind of get your hands dirty, full of dough or something like that, or chopping, lots of chopping going on, age appropriate, of course. Anyway, things like that you can fall back on, and again, kind of scrap the schedule for the day that you had in your mind, and hey, let's read this great book, and then just sit down and read the book. So you're not you're just it's kind of a reset, and it helps then just kind of give a little pause, especially if you've been pushing really hard. We'll do this sometimes when we've been pushing really hard in the garden season, right? And we're all kind of, tired of, that's a lot of work, to harvest and then preserve and what have you. And, just like, okay, we're going to, take a moment and have a family movie night, something like that, that is safe for everybody to watch and uplifting, wholesome, that kind of thing, or read a great book or any of those things. It just helps give that little reset for everybody, mom included.
Yeah. Yeah. It can't always be school 100% of the time,
Yeah.
right? You have to have some separation, right? Even though you're at home
Yeah.
and both are happening at the same time. So
Yeah.
it's just like the age-old, issue of work from home. How do you separate work from play at
Yeah.
home,
Yeah, that's
and you
hard.
just got to figure out how that works.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I can vividly remember handwriting practice time during the school, right? And they I still know the paper, how it looks. You've got the solid line and the dotted line and the solid line and a little clock up at the top, and with the numbers, and you're supposed to start at 2 o'clock and go around and end at some point, and between the dotted line and the bottom line, and then come down, and anyway, all this stuff to learn how to draw or write your letters correctly and the right size, and all this stuff. That was the pits. That was the worst for me. My older sister loved that. That was so much fun,
Right.
and just ate up every minute. But that was the worst possible time spent in my entire life, I felt. And anyway, you encouraged me and attempted to help coerce me into potentially trying it, or at least doing it. But no, wasn't gonna do it. And you were smart or wise enough to say, okay, that's fine. You wouldn't. I remember you wouldn't let me go. I wanted to go do something else. You wouldn't let me leave the space, right? But I didn't have to work on that. So I just sat there. I still have a memory, of relief that I didn't have to do it. But just sitting there staring at my sister's paper. She wrote her letters. So I was still listening and observing it happening. I just wasn't physically doing it, right? Now her handwriting to this day is better than mine, right? She can write faster, she can write prettier, but I can write,
Right.
and do what I need to do. And anyway, that's just potentially an example of where you have this plan, right? And one kid is totally great with it. The other
Yeah.
one is totally, absolutely not. Do not let that happen, and don't let it come near me.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you deal with
Yeah.
that? I think that's a good example where, again, most people looking, if they were just analyzing that situation as a fly on the wall, would be like, well, he's got to be doing something. He's not learning anything. Well, maybe not that particular skill, but I did learn, and just through observation, about at least how to write that letter or the shape of that letter or something, even though I wasn't necessarily physically doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and thankfully I'm wiser than I used to be because if that happened today, which it happens with, the younger boys, I would probably do something different. Yeah, it's true. I wouldn't let them just go off, right, and do whatever, right? Because then you don't know what they're going to do
Right.
while they're doing whatever, right? But in hindsight, I would probably, knowing you love the blocks, well, let's get out the blocks and see if you can make an A with the blocks, or the pipe cleaners, or, something like that, right?
Right.
That would still, you're still looking at how the letters formed, but it's this hands-on kind of thing that boys just love, right? Girls too. I keep saying the boys thing again. That's because we have a lot of boys. Girls love it too, but they tend to be more apt to, and willing to take the pencil and try it. Where there's, or even just kinesthetic learners, visual learners, they really like to feel something, so if you've got pipe cleaners, or if you've got blocks, or, something, Cuisinart rods, whatever, if you just have something that that your child likes, then they can explore, and try making the letters with those. There's still learning happening. And that's probably something we should say too, is there's still learning happening. We don't even necessarily know what that is, what learning is happening. Even if it's boredom is a good teacher, right? You're just there kind of like, well, I could do what she's doing or not. I'd rather choose not and just sit here with my thoughts, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Einstein was doing that all the time, and we see what happened with him and many other great people. I have a vivid memory of your brother, just younger than you. He was downstairs in the family room listening to some music, and it was really, really loud. And he was little, he was maybe 7 or 8, and he had put on some great music and was listening to it. And I had this agenda in my mind, right, of what he should be doing. And I came, into the room with my with my agenda that I thought he should do. And I said his name, Timmy. And my recollection is he was laying on the couch, and he sat up and he looked over the top of the couch at me, and he just had tears streaming down his face. And thankfully, I was wise enough in that moment to just let him be, because whatever was happening in that music, something was happening inside of him that was far better than I could ever orchestrate.
Okay, well, we hope you've enjoyed the questions so far. We've got a whole bunch more, and we're excited to hear more of your questions down in the comments. So be sure and leave those. And don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hype. The 5 free things that really help small channels like this get off the ground and spread to a wider audience. That's really all we could ask for, is the videos to get in front of more eyeballs. So if you'd help us by doing those 5 free things, we'll continue to bring this free content to you guys. Stay safe, and we'll see y'all next time.